So what are the best art supplies for watercolor? That will depend on the type of technique you are using, the kind of approach that you prefer in your works. But I have a bunch of art supplies in my studio that I couldn't live without and that I think make my paintings look as best as they can be and make my process as smooth as possible. And today I'm gonna show you my top 10 of those. So let's dive into it. I gathered all my art supplies here today to share with you. The main criteria that I set up for myself today is to choose 10 of the most favorite things, and I had to have been using them for at least 3 months. I think only one of them I had for 3 months. Anything else I used for much longer, and I had to use it more frequently than anything else in my studio in order to include it in this video. Let's start with watercolor paper. Top favorite of them all is Canson Mulandura. This paper, I used it years back. It had a different cover. A lot of you know that this paper have been discontinued as a product of Canson, and it was impossible to find online for about 2 years. But about a year ago, the paper started to appear again in a new packaging in Jackson's Art Supplies, and so I did some googling. Apparently, Canson is now producing this paper again, but the paper is now being produced in UK, and so that's why it is being distributed there. I did not see the paper on Amazon or anywhere else. If you have access or know that this paper is available online somewhere else besides Jackson's Art Supplies, feel free to share that in the comments. For now, I get it from Jackson's Art Supplies not only in form of blocks. They have hot pressed and cold pressed 300 GSM. This is a 100% cotton paper. I get the A4 blocks and then the A3 blocks, which are larger, and I also got the arcs, and I have been stretching this paper to wooden frame to make it look like a canvas. You might have seen that painting that I did, larger watercolor painting, few videos back. I will link it down below, where I did this process with this particular paper, and it works so well for me, not only to paint like little studies and illustrations, which the A4 format is for, and I use it for that, but also to do serious paintings in a larger scale. What I love about this paper is how the color looks on the paper. When you put it there, the color looks vibrant. It doesn't dry very pale or matte or something. I did have issues with it on like Fabriano paper or even Arches. It seems to me like the color slightly fades, but not on this paper. I don't see any fadings, and I've done some really vibrant pieces on this paper. Let me show you an artwork. So here are a few works that I did on that paper. You might have seen a lot of them on my YouTube channel, and the color stays so vibrant. Even these portraits. This is an illustration that I did recently for a book, and this portrait was to test out schminky paints, but even here I can see granulation nicely, and all the colors, they just pop. Here was another thing that I painted for a tutorial for my Slovak community. The purpose of this painting was to use very bold colors to do a piece that would be a standalone pattern, and yeah, the paper did not fail me. The colors are so vibrant. So the color vibrancy, another thing, when I work wet in wet with this paper, the effects that the paper show, they look different than on another type of paper. It's just how the paper is made. It is slightly softer, doesn't have such a high texture like Arches does or Saunders paper, and all the textures and effects, they really show in their best form. And I am trying to be very expressive in my artworks, like here for example also, and I use expressive brush strokes. I like things when they flow on paper, and if you are the type of painter that likes to glaze a lot and to put a paint somewhere and let it stay there, then this paper is not for you. And that's why people, I think, use Arches paper and like Arches paper. I like Arches paper, but for a different technique than what I've been doing lately and experimenting with. If you are a bit like me and you like to experiment with what watercolor has to offer, throw splatters in a piece and like to work wet in wet and
really just utilize the colors and textures bleeding into one another, you're gonna love this paper. I am sure of it. I love it. Besides the texture, it is cold press paper, but the texture doesn't really interfere too much with the pencils. If you want a pencil edition, then you are fine to go even on this paper. That's another thing that people tend to complain about cold press papers. When they want to combine techniques and do fine detail with pencils, they have a hard time doing so when the texture is too rough. This texture really isn't that rough. It's rather smooth, but it's not hot pressed. I also bought a hot pressed version of this paper to test out. The hot press paper scares the hell out of me, and I did not touch that paper yet. But I'm gonna be brave soon. I will make a tutorial. You're gonna laugh at me probably. Gonna mess something up straight to a camera, and it's gonna be all good fun, I think. I used to prefer Arches. That paper is very good and very expensive also. And I would say that it works for a technique that's different than my own, and I still like to use it from time to time. Yeah, I will get back to Arches. It's not like I'm exclusive and don't paint on anything else. I like to test paper, switch things up, and sometimes I run out of it and then I have no other choice than use something different. But if I have an important piece to paint, lately this is my go-to paper. Definitely belongs to the first place of the favorite art supplies haul. Let's put it aside and let's check out my sketchbooks. This is my watercolor sketchbook. I am still not able to give you a sketchbook tour because I still have 6 pages left in this one, but I have been using it for 2 years now and I can highly recommend it for anyone who has techniques similar than mine. But I think I saw artists who have different technique, the glazing type of technique, and this sketchbook also works for them. This is Strathmore 400 series watercolor sketchbook. And I use this one. It is a portrait format and it's A4 size, so it's the larger one. I had Moleskine, a 200 GSM paper sketchbook before. I did not finish that sketchbook. The paper was very bad and I paid so much money for that sketchbook, more than for this one. This one costs about 32 or 33 euros here in Slovakia. I think that you can get it for a similar price somewhere. It is widely available in many countries, so you might be able to get your hands on something like this if you are searching for it. And the cheaper version might just be the smaller sized sketchbook. This is not cotton, however. This is student grade paper. There is nothing to complain about this sketchbook, even though it is not cotton. I don't honestly need cotton paper in my sketchbook necessarily. I am very glad that I have a cotton sketchbook nowadays because I received that Koval sketchbook that you maybe saw me using in 2 of my videos, and I will continue using that one. That one is filled with Fabriano 100% cotton paper, Artistico. This one is not cotton, but still the colors, they pop nicely. The texture is lovely and you can paint on both sides, even though sometimes I had the weird feeling that one side isn't quite like the other, but always somehow manage to pull things off. Look at how the colors look. Maybe you didn't hear or did not experience this, but my experience is that on a student grade paper, the cellulose or the pulp paper, colors, they tend to look darker and more vibrant than on cotton. The cotton makes the pigment sit lower or something, depending on which paper really, because the Canson Mondrua doesn't do these kind of things to me, but other cotton papers, they do. You see significant loss of saturation when you paint on it. You have to adjust the number of layers, but that doesn't happen on this kind of paper. However, if you want to glaze, then you will reach the limit of this type of paper, because every pulp paper has a limit that's lower than the cotton paper. Any exploration that you will want to do in a sketchbook, I think it's why would you need the 100% cotton paper to be in your sketchbook? Maybe for that feeling of how that feels when you paint on 100% paper. I view my sketchbook differently than I view when I do an artwork that will be sold and exhibited. It's like the finished piece and this is the sketch. So I don't mind doing sketch on a high quality pulp paper, it's still a sketch. You don't even have to use light fast paints to paint your sketches. I will never like turn this away from the sketchbook and sell or like frame or something. So while it's nice to have 100% cotton paper in there, the price might just be unbearable for many of you, and I think the purpose of a sketch is to practice, so you are good to go with pulp paper. We're gonna do the tour later, but this is the last thing that I painted in it. I get a reminder that when I tape the masking tape all over the page, because I do that so that it doesn't buckle too much, then when I'm trying to remove the tape, the paper rips. That's what pulp papers do. It doesn't look as neat. With all I just said about my approach to why I have the sketchbook, I don't care, honestly. Strathmore 400 series watercolor sketchbook. I will get another one once I finish this one, and I can't find a reason not to keep on using this one. It lasted me 2 years. And while we are on the subject of sketchbooks, I don't know if we would call this most favorite art supply. I used 1/3 of this sketchbook. This is the Art Secret sketchbook, and I use it for just like practice drawings, perspective drawing and so on. This is just like something that I use to practice, mostly when I'm just home watching TV. It doesn't have the greatest paper, but it has a lot of pages and it's cheap. It's Talent's art creation. It was not expensive. It contains a lot of pages, and I don't hate the pages. It's fun to use. Next thing on my list definitely are my IKEA plates. Yay! This one is like a proper painting palette, and these plates were I think €2 each. Guys, this is how I work. I abandoned these palettes filled with pens and colors about a year ago. I still keep this small one to go with me when I travel or so. But in the studio, I just use these porcelain plates, and I keep my palettes separate. Like this one is for greens, this one is for blues. This one's mostly for the earthy tones and some reds. Here are also reds. And this is a skin tone palette. It's been like this for a while now, and when I am creating a painting, I always do a color selection process beforehand. I decide which colors I'm going to use and which I won't. So with colors all planned like that, I want any other color being out of the way so that I don't accidentally reach for it. But it's not an issue. I don't think that it happened. It just keeps me organized to have the colors inside the groups. Oftentimes I'm just working with greens and the skin tones, and that's it. So I don't need to see the blues to just make me confused. I'm not saying you have to work like this. This is just something that I do, and this works for me. It has been working for me for a month, and I don't think I'm gonna change this system anytime soon. Besides, don't you just love this palette? It looks like a painting. Next thing on my list is this guy, and it's not what's inside but the actual brush case or a pencil case. This is by Kohinoor. It was cheap. I don't think it was more than €6. I only remember it was not costly. Before that, I was using this guy from Jackson's. I made a video about this brush case a year back or so. I did not use all these brushes for a while, and I did not use the brush case because it's not too practical to carry around, and it's not too practical to find stuff in it. However, ever since I bought these, I just go everywhere with it. It makes it easy to grab and put in my purse, and all the tools, they stay organized. This is how I keep them. I don't see myself switching to anything else or a different system anytime soon. Another thing that I can't live without is what's inside this purse, but not all of it. Some tools are more important than others. First of all, you will laugh at me, but I'm crazy about this particular mechanical pencil. So these are the pencils by Pentel, Graph 600. I don't know what that means. It's just a regular mechanical pencil by Pentel, who is not plastic, but it's metallic, which I love because it's a little heavier, and it's just how it sits in my hand. And they were sold in stationery stores in Slovakia, in Šeft, and they had them in about 4 colors, and then suddenly the pencils disappeared. I visited a couple of those stationery stores looking for these mechanical pencils. I purchased last 7 pieces that they had in stock, and and I'm hoping that they will last me a long time, because probably will not get my hands on such great mechanical pencil anytime soon. The only thing that I see in stores these days is those plastic ones, and I don't like them. Just doesn't feel great to draw with them. But I use the mechanical pencil not only for drawing, but I use it for my organizer. I write with it. I don't write with pens, just use this mechanical pencil. So that's the story of my mechanical pencil, however long, but I deeply cherish this piece of equipment and I take it everywhere with me. I have in 3 colors here, 3 colors at home, and I have a spare one here in the studio, but I don't know if I will lose these 7 pieces or there's something wrong with them. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Gonna have to get used to something that's at least reminding me of this one. It was a very good one, very good model. I don't know why they discontinued it. Let's move on to erasers. I thrown erasers into one category, but I also made a special video about the erasers, so I don't want to talk about them too much. But these are must have, and I take them everywhere with me because I never know which I'm gonna need. I'm using all 3 of them. These 2 are by Faber-Castell. These are the dust-free eraser, and I need to use that one when I need to really get rid of the line. And this is a kneaded eraser that you see me using 90% of the time, just to clean my sketch and soften lines a little before every painting. So that one in blue color I am really attached to these days. But I also use the Mono Zero eraser. I think this by Tombow, and I got used to using this one for details and if I need to erase a text in my organizer as well. Very shortly about the erasers. They definitely are a favorite supply and the one that I can't move around without. Last thing that I carry in this pouch with me are my brushes, and I love that from a large amount of brushes that I could choose, I only now use a very limited selection, and it's basically those that you see here. So first of all, I have soft watercolor brushes by Silver Black Velvet, and then I have synthetic, more sturdy watercolor brushes by Princeton. These are the Princeton Velvet Touch brushes. I will send these, and I had to buy these by myself, but I use the sturdier brushes whenever I need to draw more or for my lifting technique, and the softer ones if I don't want the paint to be lifted and to distribute the paint equally, and also for like more watery washes. 3 sizes, 2 types, and they're very handy. I can't imagine just painting with natural or just painting with sturdier, snappier synthetic brushes. Besides that, I have one brush. This is the Da Vinci Forte Basic that I use for details. That's all that I need. And I have 2 flat brushes. This one is by ProArte. It's a smaller one and it has sable bristles. I bought it long ago, so I wouldn't buy sable bristles nowadays, but I already have it, so let's make the best use of it. I use it quite often. But if I was to choose one brush that is my absolute favorite of this all, is this one by Princeton. It's the Square Wash. I use this brush so often. I use it to dampen my surface if I need to work wet in wet. I use it to distribute larger amounts of paint and water around the background or anything larger that I need to paint, and it is soft and it can hold and bear so much color, but at the same time it can be sharp and precise. It's a Square Wash 3/4 inch Princeton Neptune. Love its appearance, love the color. I am slightly twisted that way. I also look how my things appear on the camera, and this one really works with my setup, but it's a great brush. It's a really good one. It's not the first time that I'm recommending it. I do have hake brushes, like the Japanese hake brushes that I have been using before I got this one, and ever since this one arrived, the hake brushes, I don't even know where they are right now. This is the pouch that I use for my pencils and my brushes and everything else, and I just use this and I'm good to go. The only sad thing is that this one doesn't fit. Usually I just grab a piece and then stick it inside. That works for me. Next thing on the list, I only got 3 items left. One of them is my masking fluid. You must be tired of hearing the word masking fluid. I've done so many videos about it lately. I did a masking fluid tips and tricks video, and then I did a brand comparison video. We also had a giveaway, and out of all the masking fluids that I purchased and tested out, the Sennelier one sort of stuck. I'm not saying that it's the best. It works for me personally. I like the greenish tint. It's just what I enjoy, and it is more liquidy. It sometimes can lift some of the paint if I mask not directly to the paper but on a watercolor layer that is dried. Since this is really liquid, it can lift some of the paint because I work on a paper that likes to lift a lot. But other than that, it is highly dependable, reliable masking fluid. What I like also is that it peels in one go, and it's just so enjoyable to grab the entire thing and peel it off. That did not happen with a lot of those masking fluids that I tested. It made it in my favorite collection, and I have been using a lot of it. 1/4 of the masking fluid is now gone, and I have it for 3 months, I think. This is the youngest item on my list. Next one is the Winsor & Newton Designer's Gouache. I use gouache less and less these days, but if I need white highlights or if I need to lighten something, correct something or anything, then this gouache has saved me so many times. It is permanent white, it is insanely opaque, it is water soluble, so you don't have to worry. Like with inks, you can't get rid of that shine, and if you want to correct, then you can't because it's permanent after dries, and with gouache you can. I also love the Schminky, Horadam gouache, both of them I like very much, but it just happens so that Winsor & Newton is easier to get in Slovakia, and I think easier to get in general all over the world, and so I decided to feature this gouache and did not feature the Schminky gouache. I think the Schminky gouache is slightly more opaque than this one in the end, but you know, when you can't get your hands on it because it's unavailable, or you simply have this one available, there is not such a big difference between them, and I have been using this one and buying this one for months now. Last item on my list are my favorite watercolor brands. So I purchased Sennelier watercolors, I have Winsor & Newton watercolors, but none of them is in my studio for long enough to make it in my favorite art supplies list. However, these 2 brands have been with me ever since I started to paint with watercolor, both of them, especially the Schminky and then the Daniel Smith. Those are the 2 brands that I wanted to feature. And I was like standing in front of my watercolor collection few minutes back before trying to shoot this video and thinking like, which color should I feature from all those colors in my watercolor collection by these 2 brands. I decided that the Prussian blue is my go-to paint by Schminky. It's the blue that is my favorite shade of blue. It's a cool blue and absolutely reliable, a light, fast, beautiful shade. Sad to say that it triumphed indigo paint, because that's another shade by Schminky that I really prefer, use a lot, but that is not so light fast, so I mostly limit it for the use inside my sketchbook. And this Prussian blue, I have been using it for higher level artwork that I also sell. Besides, that shade is just amazing. And from Daniel Smith, I particularly am attached to this one red that is strong and bold, and it just looks amazing, and that's Spiral Red. And you can tell because I buy 15 milliliter tubes of this one, not the 5, and I already am at my second tube. I use this one often. In this artwork that you saw a video of here on my YouTube channel, I featured both of these paints, the Prussian blue and the Spiral Red. What can I say? This is like a really great combo to start with. If you can get your hands on any watercolor by these 2 brands, then these are the ones that I would recommend to you to try out. They can work as primary colors. I would add Quinacridone Gold by Schminky to this trio, because that's the entire combination of colors that this painting was made with, and that's all that you need. You can create greens, you can create flesh tones with it, and also the blacks. And if I was to give one like honorary place in my favorite art supplies list, then it would be to a binder clip. Is that an art supply? I don't know, but it's definitely a favorite one. Can't live without these in my studio, and I never have enough of them. I always run out of them. Like right now, on my to-do list there's like to visit a stationery store and restock on them. They work for everything. It's self-explanatory. I love the binder clip. They are super handy. Let me know which art supply is your favorite or which one caught your eye. Let me know what you are using. You can share your thoughts in the comments down below. We'd be grateful to hear what you are using, and I will see you in the next video. Have a great day. Bye.